Let's talk about the big speech. A lot of hot air, high temperature speech. What does it all mean? I know some people are freaking out, some people are scared, but don't be. Let me explain. The way that a mob works is it's like a family, and you have all of these people who are loyal to the mob boss. And sometimes a mob will get into battles with other mobs over territory. And the mob uses a lot of different, tactics to kind of terrify the local community or neighborhood in order to stay in power. And sometimes these mobs are so successful that they just keep expanding their territory, and sometimes they can take over an entire realm. And we've seen this in certain places in the world, where certain mob bosses have taken over. And so our current mob boss is kind of trying to follow in the footsteps of these historical mob bosses so that he can take over the entire realm. But unfortunately, he just doesn't have what they had. So there's three things that our mob boss doesn't have that previous mob bosses did have when they took over their realms. First, popularity. This one doesn't have any popularity. In fact, the popularity was so low that when it came time for the joust, he had to enlist the help of certain tech bros to finagle the joust in order to make it look like people wanted him. And even since that time, there's been a precipitous loss in support on the Magatonian side. Number two, a strong economy. This is usually how you get support or keep support. We have the opposite of that right now. People can't afford eggs, people can't afford groceries, people can't afford a lot of things, houses, cars, etc. And number three, mob bosses need to have the support of their soldiers. So whenever there's a mob boss in a neighborhood, they have soldiers that they can send out into the neighborhood. They are often called enforcers. And these enforcers kind of, keep everybody in line. So today, the mob boss in our story decided to make a big speech to his enforcers to kind of get them all on board with his new plans for enforcing things, not just in the red neighborhood, but throughout the realm. And in particular, he's really interested in going after cities that have a blue tint to them. And he's thinking, oh, this is where we're going to focus our enforcement activities. But he just doesn't have the support of his enforcers. And no mob boss has ever successfully taken over an entire, realm without the support of his enforcers. After he gave his speech, there was just a lot of silence. And when our mob boss was giving his talk to his enforcers, he used a lot of trigger words. He used a lot of words that were directly linked to the history of this realm. They were directly linked to previous campaigns of enforcement that targeted particular groups. So there was a lot of reference to like the Wild West and, going after women. And there's a lot of words I can't say. But anyway, in this flowery speech, there was a lot of references to the history of the mob in this realm. And so, what the goal was to try to trigger these old sentiments, these old supremacy sentiments. And this is just the most recent failure. And so, remember that this particular mob boss has been trying to create battles, kerfuffles between different groups. And him and his people have been trying this for quite some time. And so they first tried to create like a red neighborhood, blue neighborhood gang war, right? And then that didn't work. And so then they were like, oh, we're going to try to do like a black white gang war. Went to DC and they went to LA and they went to all these places and tried to start that kind of kerfuffle. And that didn't work. And so then they said, well, we're gonna make this big brouhaha about this young slain hero, and we're gonna use the departure of this young slain hero, Chuckle Cheese, to try to rile up all of the palm-colored three-legged people of a particular background who might want to like really focus on their supremacy, right? And that didn't work. So when he was talking to his enforcers, he was talking about how we're going to go after the quote, what's the word for that? Enemy within. But here's the problem with that plan. Okay, the way that mobs work is they take over territories in different neighborhoods. And one of the ways they do that is by controlling the flow of money and goods. And so they kind of take charge of that. And then everybody is kind of dependent on them to determine who has access to what goods and what money. And so there might be certain goods that, they're kind of known for, like drugs that make you feel like you're in an altered state, and drugs that help you to, you know, engage in battles. But really what they're doing is controlling the whole flow of goods and services. And so here's the problem with his plan. Um, the villages where the people wear blue hats, they're the ones that actually have all the gold bullion. And so if you start a kerfuffle with the people that actually have all the gold bullion and you don't actually control their gold bullion, then they can just remove their gold bullion from circulation. And so it makes it kind of hard to kind of take control of a village like that. But here's another really important reason why the mob can't take over all of the villages in the realm, and that is that they are appealing to these old mindsets, mindsets that used to work, right? Divisive mindsets, us versus them, good guy, bad guy, this color, that gender, this gender, this person who loves these people versus the people who love these people. Um, these kind of old divisions that used to work and were super important to the history of this realm in terms of, yeah, our whole trajectory. These were really central beliefs. But we have changed, we have evolved, we have a higher consciousness. And we can see that in particular with the young people who have been just the collective this ain't it chief of the of the youngest generation when it comes to the watermelon land is a perfect example. Go boat parade, almost there. So here's the thing, they cannot appeal to our baser natures anymore because we're no longer vibing like that. We're no longer caught up in those divisions. We cannot, we can't be whistle call. What is that word? They can't blow those whistles and make them work with us. I know I got that backwards, but you know what I mean. So there can't be an us them fight if there's no us that agrees that there's a them. And this is the situation we have now in our realm where we are beginning to unite across these perceived differences that used to be so important in this realm. And we're no longer having this same us then mentality. Even when it comes to red blue, there are a lot of red hats who are like so upset about Chuckle Cheese and the whole cover up that they're now questioning everything that Red Hat leaders have to say. And so they're coming together, like people are coming together across this line and saying, wait a minute, we all agree that this was super sus and we need an investigation. Like nobody believes the lone roof climber narrative, and everyone finds the Black Widow just super sus. And all of these efforts to send toy soldiers into blue cities have been total failures, whether in the court or in just terms of, the resistance, the dancing and singing in the street. You know, you can't battle somebody who's dancing and singing. You can't make them into bad guys, right? So there has to be a bad guy for there to be a battle, but there is no bad guy. Like we're all the good guys now. Like no one ever even believes in that anymore. Good guy, bad guy. I mean, that's just nonsense. We're just all collectively laughing. Like you want me to fight who for what? Sis, I'm just trying to pay my rent. Because even our resistance isn't a resistance in the old way of thinking. It's a persistence. It's a unification. It's a consciousness raising. You can't fight water with fire, and we are the water. You can't declare war on a consciousness shift, and that's what he's trying to do. And so, as with all of his other efforts, he will fail. Keep dancing, my friends.